the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Really excited to talk about the San Francisco 49ers because we're gotten through the draft and now we've gotten to a point where time to start looking at the roster. What is this San Francisco 49ers roster look like? We've went through free agency, we went through the draft, and now we get to look at the depth charts. And one of the most interesting rooms in the entire team is going to be the wide receiver room. All the conversations about Brandon Ayuk being in his fifth-year option. Was he going to be traded? A lot of people believed he was. A lot of people believe he wasn't. Well, guess what? Brandon Ayuk is still on the roster. The likelihood of him getting traded are almost zilch at this point. You know, always want to say almost. You never know, but I would say it's very unlikely. Then you look at Deebo Samuel and all the rumors that were coming around Deebo Samuel was the fact that maybe he was going to be moved during the draft. And of course, the draft came and it went, and Deebo Samuel was on the team. Before that ever even happened in free agency, Jauan Jennings, would he be back? Of course, the 49ers value him so much, they put a second-round tender on him and made it so it was going to be very difficult for another team to want to go ahead and sign him. Number one, they'd have to give him a pretty good amount of money. Number two, if you do sign him away, you owe the 49ers a second-round pick. So that meant Jauan was coming back, and of course, he signed that tender, and he's going to be back in San Francisco for the season. Now, question marks about next year, and the wide receiver room definitely are there. But for now, we get to look at a roster where the 49ers added two more wide receivers in the draft, more wide receivers in free agency, re-signing Chris Conley, bringing in Trent Taylor, and we have an interesting dynamic in the wide receiver room. It went from being 3 deep to being very deep. And that's exactly what the 49ers were looking for when they went into free agency and they went into the draft. They want to make every single room as deep as possible. But now it's got everyone talking. Which wide receivers are going to be where? How does this depth chart look heading into training camp? And I can easily tell you, most of the time it starts with veterans. Veterans, even if they're guys that have just only been on the team for a year and you're really not seeing a whole lot of potential in them moving forward, a lot of times coming into camp, they'll be ahead of young rookies because they understand the playbook. They understand where they're supposed to be. But for some players, it's different. So we're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk all about how these wide receivers are slotted and how I think they're going to move, and then also where the competition is going to be, because there's going to be a lot of competition in the wide receiver room. So it's going to be great. Buckle in. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. If you're listening on the audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports this season. From MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. So this is going to be a fun one because I talked a little bit about some of the question marks around the 49ers team. Well, now that we know that 11 is going to be in the house and Deebo changes number to 1, so 1 is going to be in the house. 15 is going to be here with Jauan Jennings. You're feeling comfortable. Now, some of the losses, 49ers lost Ray McLeod. So that changes the dynamic of this football team. McLeod goes to Atlanta. And the thing about Ray was he handled all of the punt return duties, and he was very equipped to handle those. He was a sure guy to handle the catching of the football when it came to punts. A lot of guys we worry about, and Ronnie Bell struggled in that category when Ray was hurt. So the 49ers knew they needed to address that, and they didn't address it in free agency. They addressed it in the draft, and they addressed it heavily. made sure that they had the guys that could handle punt return duties because it is a very important aspect to this team. So, of course, when we're looking at the top two wide receivers in the room, it's pretty easy to figure out who those guys are. Brandon Ayuk is going to play X, and then Deebo Samuel's going to play Z. Those two guys are set. Those are who the starting wide receivers for the San Francisco 49ers are going to be. I know they drafted Ricky Pearsall, and Ricky Pearsall was a first-round pick, and that is fantastic. Ricky Pearsall will not start for the 49ers in 2024, barring an injury. It would have to take an injury for him to be able to start. But I do expect the 49ers to get him involved. More on him in a second. Then Jauan Jennings will be the third wide receiver in. Jauan being around San Francisco is easy to see the value. Number one, they were willing to put a second-round tender, which means they're paying him over $4 million this season, which was a huge raise for him. Now, that's not what he would get on the open market, but the way contracts work and the way the collective bargaining agreement works, this is when he starts to get a little bit of his money. Next year, he'll be able to go out on the open market and more than likely get more money than the 49ers are able to pay him. I think they'd be willing to pay him whatever. If there was no salary cap, I think Jauan Jennings would be staying in San Francisco for a long time. That is not a luxury that the 49ers have, especially, with a lot of the guys coming up as far as being on expiring contracts. Jauan Jennings, last year of his contract. Deommodore Lenoir, last year of his contract. Other guys on defense as well, like Drake Greenlaw on the last year of his contract. Taunu Ufonga, Aaron Banks. There's a lot of guys who are going to be on their last year. So 49ers know potentially they're going to lose some guys. But Jauan Jennings is going to be in-house, and the 49ers need Jauan Jennings. Jauan Jennings does all the nasty, dirty work that you want from a player. The fact that they could use him in so many different ways, and not just in the receiving game, but in the blocking game as well, in the run game, where he not only can block linebackers, he not only will come in and crack defensive ends, but now they've even used him in wham blocking, where he comes in motion and he blocks interior defensive linemen. That's another level when it comes to a wide receiver in the NFL. At 6'3" and over 200 pounds, 215 pounds, he packs a punch when he hits, and the guy is a serious threat to make plays. So 49ers top three are set in stone. This is where the conversation begins. Now, the 49ers would pick 31 in the 2024 NFL draft, selected Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver from Florida. And Ricky Pearsall is going to be the fourth wide receiver on this depth chart. And I know there's other guys who were on this roster beforehand, but Pearsall with a first-round pick means they have an intended target for what he's going to be doing for this football team. And I think Kyle Shanahan's excited about Pearsall, and he should be. The guy's got great hands, great ability to go up and get the football, add some extra dynamics, but fills the Ray McCloud role. He has a really good understanding of being able to create with routes, being able to use leverage at the top of his stem to get in and out. Pearsall is going to be a fun player. Now, he could also help with punt return. That is something he said he was expected to do. Of course, there's other guys on this roster that might be their avenue to make the team. So how much is Ricky Pearsall going to be involved in the offense? Well, there are times the 49ers like to go to 5 wide receivers or empty sets. The problem is, normally when they go to empty sets, 2 of those players that are out there in the empty are George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. So how many times will they actually go 4 receivers? I don't think it's going to be that often unless they can get certain matchups that they're looking for. If they can put a extra receiver on the field and get a matchup with Pearsall on a safety or Deebo on a linebacker, 100% they're going to be willing to take advantage of that matchup. So finding matchups that work your way is going to be a week-to-week thing. So we might see at times Pearsall get in there and get a few targets, and then the next week maybe not as many. And I think it's going to be kind of hit and miss when it comes to Pearsall in year one. But Kyle will find ways to get him involved in the offense. And there's going to be times where Deebo comes off the field or Ayuk comes off the field, and Pearsall and Jauan Jennings are going to be expected to step in and take some of those reps. So that's how it looks right now to me. It's going to be Ayuk, Deebo, then Jauan, and Pearsall. And that's not the end of the conversation because the 49ers weren't done drafting. They drafted Jacob Cowing, wide receiver from Arizona. Why is that so interesting? Well, Cowing is 5'8", 168 pounds. He is a smaller guy. And Probably the smallest wide receiver we've seen the 49ers take as far as size, height-wise, and weight was probably Richie James. They did that in 2019 in the 7th round, and Richie James handled kick and punt return duties and then was one of the backup wide receivers. Jacob Cowing's got elite speed. He's faster than Richie James with a 4.38 speed. The guy can move. Now, he's not that much faster than Pearsall, who ran a 4.41, but those guys could absolutely move, and the 49ers had to focus on that. Now, where it gets interesting is because you would expect a 5th-round pick to have a real good shot to make your football team and be the 5th wide receiver. But we also know the 49ers value Chris Conley. They brought him back last year. He was a part of their roster down the stretch and into the Super Bowl. So I think they're going to give every opportunity to these guys to go out there and prove it. I think there's 4 locks to make this team: Ayuk, Debo, Jawan, and then, of course, Ricky Pearsall. After that, it's up in the air. I think Jacob Cowing, they definitely want him to make this team as a 5th-round draft pick, or 4th-round draft pick. I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. 4th round, last pick of the 4th round, in fact. You want him to make this football team. That's a lot of value. So the expectation is he's going to be there. But what exact role is Jacob Cowing going to have in this offense? I think that's interesting because we have a lot of guys who can play the slot, and that's what he does. So where exactly is he going to fit when you're talking Jawan Jennings and you're talking Pearsall needs time in the slot and Debo needs time in the slot? Could they find opportunities for him at X receiver out there behind Brandon Ayuk? I think that's a distinct possibility. Now, Kyle Shanahan said, of course, that Ricky Pearsall could also do the same thing. But I think when we go into training camp for rep reasons, I think Conley's actually going to get more reps initially than we're going to get from Cowing, while Cowing's learning the offense and picking up what's going to happen. They're going to make sure Ricky Pearsall's involved early and often. They've got to get him acclimated to be able to do the things Kyle wants him to do. So at some point, though, during training camp, during the preseason, the 49ers are hoping that Jacob Cowing is going to pass Chris Conley. Now, they are entirely different. So you're going to make a conscious choice there where Conley is a guy that's really good at blocking and really good at helping you in the run game and really good at helping in screens. And you're going to go to Cowing, who is an effort blocker. He tries, he gets in the way. He's an obstacle. He's a shield, but he's not a good blocker the way that you're going to get from Conley. So you're going from big physical blocker who can occasionally catch a pass to a guy that instead of being a good blocker is an obstacle, and he's usually the one catching the screen passes and creating something in the open field. He can create more separation and get open better than Conley. So there are definitely different. So I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know if the 49ers can keep 6 wide receivers. We've seen other years they've been willing to keep 4 tight ends, or they've been able to keep extra players at other positions. Last year it was 3 quarterbacks. Would they be willing to do that again? I think some of this is going to play into how this overall depth chart works out. But these guys right there, I think, have a shot to make it. I think if Conley doesn't make this football team, you feel like your wide receiver room is better than it was before. Now, the competition for making this team is involving really a few players, but I think the most notable of the players is Conley, Jacob Cowing, Danny Gray, and Ronnie Bell. And right now, having Chris Conley behind Ricky Pearsall is because he understands this offense. Like I said, at some point, Jacob Cowing is probably going to pass him. Once he has to understand the offense, gets involved in the offense, is able to make the blocks that he's supposed to make, he could potentially move ahead of him. But Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell are interesting because Danny Gray was a 3rd-round pick. And I know it's been 2 years removed from him being a 3rd-round pick, and his rookie season really wasn't anything spectacular. I went to training camp both years, his rookie year. I went to training camp last year, and I must say his rookie year, I understood why Kyle Shanahan wasn't putting him on the field. He struggled to acclimate to the offense. You would see flashes of the speed, flashes of him being able to stretch the defense vertically, but a lot of times he didn't know where to line up. He didn't know when to go in motion. He would jump off sides, and you could see there was some frustration with the coaching staff. There was frustration with the quarterback. People were not happy with Danny Gray's progression. Last year, Danny Gray knew everywhere he was supposed to go. He knew when to go in motion. He knew what to do in his routes, and he did more than just stretch the field vertically. He made catches over the middle of the field. He was able to get yards after the catch, and you started to see some of the flashes of the player that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch felt that he could be. And you're getting excited about the fact that, hey, maybe this is the year Danny Gray steps up and uses his 4.33 speed to help this 49ers team and create some explosive plays. Also, he was returning punts. He was returning kicks at practice. And you're looking at him like, this guy's got dynamic ability to change the game with one big play. Then the second preseason game happened, and he gets the opening kickoff return. He has a decent return. He gets knocked out of bounds, and he hurts his shoulder. That moment right there ended Danny Gray's season because the 49ers did carry him. He made the 53-man roster, and then they put him on IR. They were hoping that if they needed him down the road, they could bring him back. Danny Gray never came back. Part of the reason Danny Gray didn't come back is the 49ers, by the time it was time for him to potentially come back, Ronnie Bell was out there. They didn't want to lose Ronnie Bell, and they were not wanting to lose Chris Conley either. They seen what he could do blocking. They seen what he was able to do as far as catches at key moments, and they wanted to go there. So Danny Gray is in a little bit of a predicament here because while he has been waiting to get healthy and for his opportunity, the 49ers took two wide receivers and put them in front of him. And the reason that I say that those two guys are in front of him is, number one of them was a first-round pick. Danny Gray is not going to just stay ahead of a first-round pick. He hasn't shown anything on the field. He hasn't played in games and proven that he's better than almost anyone on this roster. So I think that Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell are like back-to-back when it comes to depth chart. But both are looking up. Because when it comes to Ronnie Bell, there's a lot of hype surrounding him coming out of Michigan. And of course, when you watch his film from Michigan, you've seen some things that he needed to get better at. Sometimes he would drop contested footballs, and sometimes he would run through zones. Instead of sitting down in the zone he's supposed to, he would run through it. And so those were a little bit of problems for for Ronnie Bell coming out of college. What did we see when he got to training camp? We seen him make plays, and then we seen balls go off his hands and be intercepted. We seen him make plays, and then we seen him not be able to make a certain block. We seen some plays, and then we seen him make another mistake. So he was a lack consistency in his rookie season. That's to be expected from a rookie. Here's the issue, though. During the season, it really felt like Ronnie Bell went from somebody they were extremely high on to somebody that they needed to be inactive because they felt that he wasn't the best option for their football team. They felt Chris Conley was. I think that's a problem for Ronnie Bell. And where are the areas that he struggled? Well, first off, making mistakes in the blocking game. Whether that was him losing contact, him holding, him not being in a certain spot, him not being able to get any sort of a push in the run game. Those were things he didn't handle well. And I think the 49ers kind of have put Ronnie Bell a little bit on the back burner. Ronnie Bell and Danny Gray have been put on notice. They're on notice that Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowling are here for their spots. And the truth is, Ricky Pearsall has got more versatility. He's got a bigger body. He displays the ability to block. Now, I'm not ready to count either one of them out because Kyle Shanahan wants the best possible roster he could possibly get. But is there room for both of them? I don't think so. Even if you elected to keep 6 wide receivers and you cut Chris Conley and you kept Jacob Cowling to be the 5th wide receiver, there's one spot left. So there is a real likelihood and a great probability that when we look at the roster to go into week 1, either Ronnie Bell or Danny Gray won't be there. Danny Gray, year 3. Ronnie Bell, year 2. Both of them should have a firm grasp of this offense, and now they have to have a firm grasp on playing really well in training camp. It's going to be one of the best battles in training camp. Completely going to be awesome. And you know what else is going to be crazy? The fact that the 49ers signed Trent Taylor. Now, Trent Taylor could just be the new Willie Snead. The The 49ers had Willie Snead around the organization for 2 years, a guy that is a veteran wide receiver who has the ability to come up off the practice squad and make key plays if you need him. Someone that can play special teams, handle the punt return game if you need him to. Willie Snead was kind of a jack of all trades, and he was okay with being on the 49ers practice squad and coming up what they need him. And then when they had to release him and then bring him back, he was very consistent in his role. He was very selfless in his role. Could Trent Taylor be that guy? Because Trent Taylor's coming to San Francisco to compete and to try to make this roster as a wide receiver and a return guy. And the 49ers just got 2 guys in the draft that do that. So I think Trent Taylor right now is going to come in and he's behind these young cats. But he's in the mix. He's in the mix behind Ronnie Bell and Danny Gray to try to make this roster. 6 roster spots might be pushing at the wide receiver position, but there might be too much talent to not keep those guys. Because the truth is, Deebo Samuel has dealt with injuries over the last several years. So making sure you have guys on the roster ready to step in is very imperative. So Trent Taylor is going to add himself to this role, and he's sitting there down at the bottom of the depth chart. Now, he's not the furthest down, but the 49ers have a lot of wide receivers on this roster. Let's just count them. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 wide receivers. And we are talking about Trent Taylor, the 9th wide receiver on the depth chart. He knows the offense. He's going to be experienced in what's expected in San Francisco. He knows the culture. All those things are great. He's not as explosive as Jacob Cowing. He's not as explosive as Ricky Pearsall. He doesn't have the ability to catch like Ricky Pearsall. He wasn't a first-round pick. Those are going to be struggles. He doesn't have the speed of Danny Gray. He doesn't have the effort of Ronnie Bell. It's going to be a fun competition. Now, I won't count out Trent Taylor because I like Trent Taylor. And I think Trent Taylor gives everything he can give every single time he's out there on the field. But right now, he's got an uphill climb to be able to make this San Francisco 49ers 53-man roster. And I'm kind of looking at him as the Willie Snead veteran wide receiver potentially on the practice squad. Another young guy who's been with the 49ers for a couple years on the practice squad is Tay Martin. And Tay Martin has been a guy that fans have been clamoring for. They really like him, and he does a good job. He's not a bad wide receiver. He's seeking an opportunity. The problem is he's seeking an opportunity on a wide receiver room that is absolutely stacked now. We're talking about guys the 49ers have drafted recently that are on the bottom of this roster. A 3rd-round pick potentially in Danny Gray that's not going to make the team. A former 5th-round pick in Trent Taylor that may not make this team. And you've got a guy like Tay Martin, undrafted, who has never really been on this active roster. He's been hanging out on the practice squad pretty consistently. So the 49ers got Tay Martin, and I think Tay Martin is going to be a very good player in camp. But when he's looking up, how many opportunities is he going to get? Now, it's not uncommon for a team to carry 10 to 12 wide receivers headed into training camp because there's a lot of footballs and a lot of routes that need to be ran, a lot of footballs that need to go around. You have multiple quarterbacks. 49ers are going to have 4 quarterbacks out there, and there's going to be a lot of drills that goes on in OTAs, in training camp, but you have to have willing bodies so that way you don't put too many reps on these players. You don't want to wear them out too early, so you got to spread the wealth. So they're going to get opportunities to impress. How much better has Tay Martin got? I think that's the question mark. So he's there. And then the 49ers brought in undrafted free agent Tariq Owens. And, of course, I talked about him in my episode yesterday. So go check that out. 49ers, signed some interesting UDFAs. Check that out because I break down Tariq Owens' game, what he's good at, what he's not. But I have Tariq at the bottom because this is what happens with the 49ers. They signed an undrafted free agent. It was Winstead last year, a guy they bring in, a big body. They see what they can get out of him. Not a bad player, tough guy, blocks well, and that's what you're looking for. Now, when you're getting Tariq Owens, he's got the pedigree. He's got pretty good size. He's nearly 6'2", 200 pounds, running a 4.5 40, a 38-inch vertical leap. The measurables are there. The problem is he's not as put together, as polished a route runner, as polished a player as the guys ahead of him. Now, he does present something a little bit different, but pretty close to what Tate Martin does. The size, the weight, the speed, pretty close. So he's going to have to go out there and impress. The one thing I know about Tariq Owens, he's going to give everything he's got. He's an effort guy. He works his butt off and he goes hard. But this 49ers wide receiver room is absolutely stacked. Talent all over the place. You've got the guys up top that can get it done. The new addition like Ricky Pearsall, that's going to be fun. Jacob Cowing, the explosive nature he has with that 4.3 speed. And then probably my favorite thing to watch, and I say that, but Ricky Pearsall is probably going to be my favorite thing to watch in training camp because of the catches and the strong hands and his ability. And I want to see how Kyle Shanahan uses it. But the battle between Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell, it was a battle last year during training camp, and it ended early because Gray got hurt. But this time, for their job. This time it's for their opportunity in the NFL. They got to get it done. One of them has to step up and go take this job away from Chris Conley. One of them has got to step up and make something happen and try to keep their roster spot ahead of Jacob Cowing. It's going to be absolutely great. But think about that. The 49ers in one draft went from having a question mark when it came to wide receiver 4 and beyond to having wide receiver 4 figured out. And now everyone's struggling to make this roster in 5 and 6 if they keep 6 wide receivers. So it's a good job by the 49ers making a room that was pretty good because it was top heavy, deeper, and really good now. It's exciting. Everyone should get pumped about Ricky Pearsall joining the 49ers with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Jawan Jennings. It's a 4-headed monster, and the 49ers just continue to add weapons to their already really cool room. Very excited about this. Let me know what you guys think about the depth chart. Would you have it different? Just so you guys will remember, I have it Ayuk, Deebo, Jawan, Ricky Pearsall, Chris Conley, Jacob Cowing. We know that Cowing's going to take his spot eventually as long as he develops. Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell back-to-back. Trent Taylor, Tate Martin, and Tariq Owens. And, of course, the reason I have Danny Gray ahead of Ronnie Bell is because I saw Danny Gray in training camp. But if you're going off what you saw in the games, you're going to be right. Ronnie Bell could be ahead of Danny Gray. I'm just going off some of the things I saw in practice and the development. So it's going to be interesting. So I think those, either way, I'm not really conflicted either way. If you have them a different way, that's fine. But let me know what you guys think about the depth chart and who's going to make this roster and who's not. I think it's interesting. I think once we get to training camp, we'll have a way better picture. But, hey, here we are. We're starting to talk about the roster and how the 49ers are built, finding if there's any holes and areas they still need to address. I would say wide receiver, they filled the holes. There's nowhere to address. They've got talent all over the place. It's going to be a fun year. They got weapons for Brock Purdy to use. And let's see if this offense could take another step forward. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.